So we've got a new Space Marine with an enormous and battle-damaged Loyalist World Eater, pricing confirmed for the new Space Marine releases this week, and a new and insidiously infiltrating Tyranid combat patrol. Let's take a look at what we've got. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today I thought I'd do a quick roundup of a few interesting newsy things that have come out over the past week, and do a quick roundup of a few things that maybe didn't really need a dedicated video all to themselves. First up, let's talk through the pricing of the new Space Marine kits now it's confirmed. Take a look at this enormous Loyalist World Eater, 100 Ha with his very battle damaged armour, and then have a look through the new idea for a combat patrol from White Dwarf for the Tyranids, the insidious infiltrators and their rules in game. Jumping straight in with the Space Marines, and we talked about these a little bit more earlier in the week, there's a bunch of new miniatures coming, including this Terminator Captain, the Ballistas Dreadnought, Scouts, Infernus Marines and Eldari Striking Scorpions. I thought we'd check back now that the prices have been shared. The Terminator Captain, which is a new sculpt, is as expected a similar sort of price to the Terminator Chaplain, £26, €34 or $42, so a bit on the expensive side for him I think. A bit more than their standard character offering. He's the one that comes with a choice of Power Fist or Sword and Stormbolter versus Combi Weapon. Kind of a shame they didn't include a little bit more adventurous war gear with him. Would have been fun to see a Thunderhammer as well. But I guess a fun extra sculpt that will be quite a lot cheaper to pick up the Tyranid one that's stomping on the Carnifex head from Leviathan. The Ballistas Dreadnought is a tiny bit better in pricing than it might have been. It's £42.50, $70 or €55, so that is slightly cheaper than the Redemptor Dreadnought, but only by £2.50 or $5 or €5. I feel like it's fair enough to make it at least a little bit cheaper than the more multi-part and more posable Brutalis and Redemptor. They do have more weapon options and things as well, though I still think it would have been cool if they had given him some different weapon options like autocannons or something different. The Infernus Squad is maybe slightly bad news. It is just as expected the same cost as the Intercessors or Assault Intercessors, £37.50, $60 or €50. Again, these were one of the ones that it might have been nice to see cheaper, given that they're pretty monopose. As before, there's a fairly good chance that you might be able to find these a bit cheaper second-hand or via starter sets. There are quite a lot of them in circulation. The new Scouts were confirmed in a box set of 10, and their pricing is £42.50, €55 or $70, so slightly on the higher side of the Kill Team side of things. I had wondered whether Games Workshop might charge a little bit more for them, seeing as GW seem to have packaged them as basically 2 copies of 5-man Scout squads within one 10-man box, so being on the up end of the Kill Team pricing doesn't really surprise me too much, and for 40k fans it's quite a lot better than if they'd had 5 of them and say charged £30 or so for that. You're still getting a better price per Scout here. As you'd expect, the Striking Scorpions are the same price here as well, £42.50, €55 or $70, kind of similar to the Scouts. And it is funny that these new and shiny aspects do indeed cost less than the Dire Avengers, a plastic kit from a long time ago now. Overall though, mostly pricing pretty much in line with expected. Kind of nice that they had a little bit cheaper for the Ballistas Dreadnought, fairly in line with Games Workshop standards, which does tend to be on the high side, at least in a fair few people's opinions. In any case, those kits will all be going on pre-order tomorrow. If you want to land any of them at a discount, then feel free to check out the links down in the video description. Element Games in the UK, Gap Games in Australia, Fenris in Canada, or Wargame Portal in the USA. They can save quite a bit versus just buying them directly from Games Workshop, anywhere between 10% and 21% here. The only thing that wouldn't be available through them is that new Heroes of the Chapter set with the Stern Guard Apothecary Biologist and the Combi Weapon Lieutenant. Looks like that will be a direct-only kit as expected, so won't go to the discount retailers. Next up on the agenda, we have a fun Loyalist World Eater. I think it's always kind of cool to see Loyalist Space Marine characters from the Traitor Legions when the Great Heresy unfolded. This guy is a character from the Horus Heresy novel series called 100 Ha, appearing briefly in a few mainline Heresy books and having a few short stories to his name as well. He's a pretty interesting character within the World Eaters Legion, basically having kind of the good fortune to be minimally exposed to Angron. He was in the Legion long before Angron was, when they were raised on Terra, wasn't present at the Drop Site Massacre, and since then he was the Riven Hound of the World Eaters, separating himself from the rest and declaring himself a leader of a loyalist force of Black Shields known as the Fangs of the Emperor, which did command with a brutal and merciless fist, brooking no dissent to the point of killing some of his subordinates, kind of in true World Eaters fashion there. He took part in some notable battles in the Horus Heresy, where he fought at Beta Garmon and at Terra at the Saturnine Gate against Abaddon the Despoiler himself. He's really quite a fun character. His new miniature is a resin one aimed at the Horus Heresy, though as with quite a lot of the Horus Heresy ones, you could certainly adapt it to 40k purposes. He's clad in Mark V Heresy armor, the one with all the studs, and his particular Heresy armor is massively battle damaged, with large bits of ceramite sheared off, according to DW representing his lack of contact with either side and an ability to resupply. He's equipped with an Archaeotech pistol and a great big power fist, and he really is quite a big beefy miniature, a good sense of weight to him, which is appropriate as he supposedly towered over a lot of other Space Marines. There are a few small nods to his previous World Eater's heritage as well, with his iron halo bearing fangs, and you can see the remnants of his chapter heraldry on his right pauldron. He does seem to have largely disavowed himself from his former legion though. The pricing on these resin miniatures can always vary a little bit. I guess it'd probably be somewhere in the region of £32, €40 or $48, though it certainly could be a bit less or a bit more than that. Named characters often seem to cost a little bit more within their Horus Heresy character series. Let me know what you think of the miniature in any case. I feel like the relative lack of heraldry could make him kind of appropriate for multiple different forces really. It might partly just be the paint job and the whole black shield thing, but he does look okay in Deathwatchy sort of colours here. I don't think I'd be surprised to see him alongside a Watch army within a mixed kill team. Finally, last but not least, we have another interesting combat patrol from White Dwarf. This one is the Tyranids Insidious Infiltrators. A new fun rule set that they've done for a different selection of miniatures to the actual Tyranid combat patrol. It seems that this might be something that we get a bit going on throughout 10th edition, getting White Dwarf style combat patrols to have different ways to field the faction in that game mode. It wasn't so very long ago that we had a Vanguard Space Marine one that's built from the old start collecting box with the monopose infiltrators and things like that. It seems they're not going to shy away too much from doing it for other collections of miniatures as well. This one they decided to do an Tyranid Infiltration Vanguard sort of organism type detachment. It's called the Insidious Infiltrators, and it has a Neurolictor, a regular Lictor, and 3 sets of 3 Von Ryan's Leapers, so not based on any actual underlying box set whatsoever. I guess you'd pick up the miniatures separately. I suppose Tyranids collectors might already have a fair amount of them in their armies already. I think it is kind of a fun idea, adding more content to the game. It's not really like the sort of game where people take the competitive side of it ridiculously seriously for the most part. So more fun content and other little armies that you could collect if you want to, I think is interesting, even if I suspect that little forces like this get played a lot less than things that actually come in their own box sets. In any case, the rules for this little Vanguard swarm have their core rule as Shadow in the Warp as per Codex Tyranids, the same Battle Shock in the command phase ability, but then they have the rest of the stuff custom for the detachment. Their enhancement choice is for Death's Shadow, the Neurolictor. He can choose to either have a Neuro Goad, where he declares 1 buff on a unit within 12 inches in the command phase, and that unit can reroll hits and charges, or he can trade that out for Psionic Phantoms, a buff for just him personally to allow him to slip away. When enemies declare shooting on him, he gets to move 6 inches, and if he is no longer within line of sight or a valid target, you roll a dice, and on a 1 to 3 the opponent can then select a new target. On a 4 to 6 they're no longer able to, and the unit just can't shoot this turn as the Lictor slips away. Both are kind of fun I suppose. The Phantoms one does sound like it could make a very slippery Neurolictor that's hard to catch up with. You need to get properly close to it to be able to actually shoot it, and not to be able to fade out of lone operative range. The secondary objectives are both interestingly Warlord focused. One of them is basically just slay the Warlord, and the sooner you do it, the more victory points you get. The other choice is the opposite way around, try and keep the enemy Warlord alive for as much of the game as possible, and you get 4 victory points per enemy unit slain while the Warlord is not destroyed. Kind of reminds me of Death Leaper's lore, breaking into an Imperial bunker repeatedly to slaughter the entire support staff of one general until his mind was broken and it cost the defense the victory. Then there's 3 stratagems: Predators Not Prey to allow you to move through enemy models and auto-pass desperate escape tests. Maybe a little bit niche that one. Swift Kills for 1 CP to improve your melee AP by 1 and then gain anti-vehicle and anti-monster 4+ for the unit. I feel like that one's maybe a kind of necessary one, as otherwise they'd really struggle with any sort of armoured targets. That could help even the Von Ryan's Leapers do a bit of chip damage there. And then there's 1 command point for Pheromone Trail, allowing Von Ryan's Leapers to make an objective secured the sort of sticky objective rule for Combat Patrol. Overall, a fun little collection of rules. The only datasheet changes that I noticed were the Lictor losing 0 CP for rapid ingress and the new Lictor losing its feeder tendrils rule. Otherwise, it's mostly fairly similar stuff. Kind of fun to have an all-melee Tyranids infiltration type patrol. I definitely like the theming of the force. I feel like maybe having 3 copies of the Von Ryan's Leapers might just be a bit of a barrier to entry to people who are collecting Tyranids. I could easily see people having at least some of those, but having 3 copies of the same squad may be a little bit less likely. Not saying that plenty of people might not have loaded up on them with Leviathan, though. I'll leave it there for today, though. Let me know what you make of the new Space Marine prices, the Loyalist World Eater, and the Tyranids Combat Patrol rules. Look forward to hearing all your thoughts down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and that's the main reason that I can make videos like this pretty much every day for the channel. If you have been enjoying all the videos, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.